Tonight on Crimewatch, he served the community for 30 years, only to be attacked and left for dead by thugs from within it.
Saw a poor old man battered.
The 92-year-old doctor, terrorised in his own home. Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. As always, we're live tonight with senior detectives from forces across the country trying to help crack some of the biggest cases in Britain. Last month, millions of you tuned in to watch our reconstruction of the last known movements of missing chef Claudia Lawrence, hearing her relationships described as complex and mysterious. Well, since then, there's been widespread speculation about this aspect of Claudia's life. Tonight, we reveal the latest on the case and we set the record straight. And also on the programme tonight, closing in on the gang of bank robbers whose hole in the wall is a hole in the roof.
And as well as this lot, I'm after the lowlife who attacked a lone woman late at night just for her purse. Little did he know she'd give him a run for his money.
And you might not know the name, but remember the voice?
I'm Jack. I see you are still having no luck catching me.
Well, I've got the inside story of how detectives finally tracked down John Humble, the infamous Yorkshire Ripper Hoaxer.
But first tonight, a case that has shocked the community. Dr. Benson here is well known in the town of Stanley, near Durham, having served as the local GP for decades. On call, day and night, he did everything from delivering babies to treating the sick and indeed caring for the elderly. Well, now at the grand old age of 92, he lives alone, is disabled and himself in need of care. But he still had his pride and his dignity until one night last winter, when thugs came calling.
This is the house that the young men were interested in. It's occupied by an elderly gentleman. He's 92 years old, frail, and lives here on his own. But just over 24 hours later, he was in the midst of the most terrifying ordeal of his life.
Is there anything else you would like, Doctor? No.
The doctor was born in 1918. He had a good education and followed in the steps of his father. He became a GP and was known as the doctor in this area, so he's helped a lot of people and he's quite well known.
He was in general practice and then did psychiatric medicine. That was really the love of his life, I think.
Right, Doctor, can you turn yourself around, please?
The doctor is quite vulnerable and does rely greatly on carers. He has had the lower part of his left leg amputated due to poor circulation. He can only move around the house in his chair and he has a stair lift, so he is really quite severely disabled.
There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Night, Doctor. I'll see you in the morning.
cash. There must be a safe here somewhere.
It's gotta be cash.
Try in the other room. Just find the cash, lads. Checking them boxes.
There's nothing, yeah? I've checked the books, there's nothing.
Am I in the plates? Where's the cash?
Upstairs, lads, come on. There must be a safe.
It's gotta be somewhere.
It's over here, lads.
There's gotta be a key.
The old man will have it.
Where's the key?
Wake up, old man. Where's the key to the safe? Where's the key to the safe? Don't mess around. Where's the cash?
Tell us where the key is!
I've got to find it, so you might as well tell us. Just tell me. Tell me where the key to the safe is.
I don't know.
I just want your cash. Tell me where the key to the safe is. Stop messing around. I want the key. I'll find it. I'm not going to leave without it.
What are you doing? He's an old man.
Tell me now.
There's no key.
You mental man.
I want the key.
There is a steady
This was a brutal and senseless act. The gang wanted money, but Dr. Benson doesn't keep any in the house. They wanted the keys to the safe, but it's always empty. They left with nothing and left Dr. Benson alone, helpless, terrified and in agony.
The house was just a complete and utter mess, just terrible, trashed. We shouted, "Doctor, are you okay?" And he responded, "I've been burgled." So we ran up and found him in his bed. Horrific. I saw a poor old man, battered and bleeding and cold. Just awful.
His face was badly bruised, he had a black eye, his cheek was swollen. I think he'd been hit on the head so hard at the side that for a few days he was partially deaf.
My officers and I want to catch the men who did this to Dr. Benson, and it's possible that you can help. CCTV shows two people at the house the night before the burglary. They're wearing dark clothing and balaclavas. One has white trainers and a tracksuit with piping on the shoulder. The other has a jacket with a flash on the sleeve. One member of the gang is very distinctive. He's 6 feet tall with blonde hair, and he spoke with a coastal accent. That means he's from North Shields, which is east of Newcastle. If you know any of these men, please talk to us.
I think deep inside it has shattered his confidence. He's frightened about being in the house on his own, especially at night.
He was a sitting target. He couldn't move. He was at their mercy. What they did was despicable. They're just weak, they're cowards. They're not real men.
He was at their mercy. I'm joined now by Detective Inspector Jeff Smith, who is leading the inquiry. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. The force here is almost unbelievable. A 92-year-old man. It's appalling.
Yes, Dr. Benson didn't know where the keys to the safe were, so he couldn't tell the perpetrators. There isn't any money in the house, but the people entered that night. They were convinced that there was money in that safe, and they were determined to get into the safe, and they'd do almost anything to get into it.
What's really sadistic is there's one member, it seems, in particular of this gang who was determined to leave this poor old man completely vulnerable.
Yes, the person who attacked him left him in a terrible state. He removed his bedding, and then he removed his panic alarm, the hoist, the wheelchairs, and then pulled the telephone wires out of the walls. I think the other two people that were involved in this offence felt uncomfortable about the level of violence, and I'm appealing tonight for them to come forward.
OK, you believe that the doctor was targeted, you believe the gang's local?
I believe that some of the gang are local with the knowledge of where the premises was, but I also think some of the gang were not from Stanley.
Now, they left empty-handed, they didn't get any cash. They left something behind, in fact. Tell us what that was.
This is a lamp that was left behind. It's used for poaching, or what they call lamping in Durham, and on the side there's a small insignia. This was left on a sofa in Dr. Benson's lounge. OK, that could be significant if somebody notices it missing from their house. Yes.
They want to talk to us. Someone in Stanley, Dr. Benson's hometown, must know who these blokes are. If that's you, then please do the right thing. You saw the terrible state that that old man was left in. Pick up the phone now, 0500 600 600. You might want to remain anonymous, that's fine too. You can call the independent charity Crime Stoppers. I'll give you their number now. It's 0800 555 111. If it were useful for you to see our reconstruction again, it is of course online as always, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. Now here's Rav with some criminals caught in the act.
And one coward gets more than he bargained for in this month's CCTV. A Saturday night out in Chester in December. Everyone's dressed to impress and ready to hit the dance floor. Except this lad inside, who's waiting to hit someone. He wants revenge after being bumped into on the dance floor. Hardly a crime. He hides on the stairs while his mate keeps lookout. As his victim comes around the corner, he smacks him in the face, fracturing his eye socket so badly he needed reconstructive surgery. Pointless, premeditated violence. Stop these thugs before they strike again. 2:30 in the morning at Cricklewood train station in northwest London last December. This young woman is buying a ticket to Luton Airport. But what's this man up to? He approaches her from behind, strikes up conversation, and then goes for her purse. He gets more than he bargained for as she fights back, but eventually he manages to run off with her money. His victim gave chase for a quarter of a mile before losing sight of him. She couldn't catch him, but you can. Take a good look. He attacked a woman alone at night. Who knows what he'll do next? Stop him. Party time at this hotel in Kensington, West London last June. Everyone's having a laugh until this party pooper takes offence to a joke and the mood turns. With a single punch, he sends his victim flying, breaking his jaw. And then just walks off, leaving his mates to finish off. The victim got married a few weeks later and had to eat his wedding meal through a straw. Now that's really not funny. He's a big guy but wasn't man enough to stick around. Bring him down to size. And what about these two thugs? Kicking a man already on the floor. It's just pathetic. Names, please. Think you know anyone? Call us here in the studio, 0500 600 600, or you can text us on 63399. Just type crime, space, and then your message. It's important to leave that space, or your message won't get through. And if you need a second look, it's also online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch.
Still ahead, he's struck at least 3 times in the last 3 months. Can you name the so-called calendar killer?
The hunt for the sexual predator who raped a 16-year-old on Valentine's Day.
I think she's absolutely devastated.
And the incredible story of how detectives finally caught the notorious John Humble, the man who became known to the world as the Yorkshire Ripper Hoaxer. For 25 years, he led the police, the public and the media on a merry dance. But it was a costly joke. Millions and millions of pounds and precious time was wasted as the real Ripper was left to keep on killing.
So all of that is still to come. Now, you may think you've heard it all when it comes to bank robberies. Far-fetched tales of inside jobs, underground tunnelling and complex safe cracking. Now, one gang in Lancashire think they found an ingenious way of getting their hands on the cash. They quite literally drop in unannounced.
This is High Street, Rishton, near Blackburn. On Friday, the 27th of February, customs and staff at the local HSBC branch were going about their normal daily business. What they didn't know is that they were being watched.
I've been working at HSBC in Rishton for about 7 years. Usually get there around about 5 past, 10 past 9 and just walk towards the branch to meet my colleague. That morning, just went in as usual, just to prepare everything for opening to the public at 9:30.
On that day, I was on plainclothes duties, and around lunchtime, I just needed to cash a cheque. It was quite busy at the time. There was about 9 people in the queue in front of me. Halfway through the queue, that's when a cash delivery van turned up and made his delivery.
Are you right? Yeah.
The security guard gave me 4 bags with money in, ready to load the cash machine.
Just as I got to the front of the queue, the security guard appeared to finish his delivery and left the bank.
That's it, love.
Thanks.
Just after the last bag had been put in the cupboard, there was an almighty crash.
Where's the money? Where's the money? Don't want to hurt you. Where's the money?
It's round there.
As a police officer, your instinct is to help them, but in addition, contact the control room.
The police, how can I help? There's an armed robbery ongoing, HSBC, High Street, Rishton. There's a vehicle parked behind the back.
In the corner. Don't look at me! Is there any more?
Yes.
Where?
The alarm was sounding on the cash van at the front of the bank. So concerned for the safety of the guys with the cash van, I moved over to see what was going on there.
Right, we're done! Come on, get out of here!
My heart was thumping so strongly, I felt like I was shaking inside. I just froze, I just felt like I couldn't move.
A witness saw a male of Asian appearance in his 30s, 5'6" in height, wearing an orangey-brown jumper, helping the robbers in their getaway. We need to know who this male is. As the robber's white van came out of this alley off Station Road, it caused one of the vehicles to brake suddenly and sound its horn. Were you in that vehicle? You can provide a clue as to where the white van went next. So what do we know about them? The robbers were about 5 feet 11 inches in height, in their late 20s or early 30s, and spoke with northwest accents. They were clearly well organised. We believe they've been watching the bank for some time. 3 weeks earlier, a witness had seen a white van parked up. One of the men inside was seen filming the bank. Who were these men? In the days beforehand, we know that the robbers went as far as to prepare a hole in the bank roof for quick access during the robbery, but they were careful to cover their tracks. In a small community like Rishton, an incident like this is unheard of. The raiders got away with a substantial amount of money and subjected the staff to a terrifying ordeal, one they'll certainly never forget.
When something like this happens, you feel totally violated. Straight after the raid, I just kept turning it over in my mind, what if? But I just feel so grateful that we got off as lightly as we did.
Well, D.I. Dowson is here now with me in the studio. A professional gang, they knew exactly what they were doing, this bunch.
Yeah, we believe they've been watching the bank for some time. 3 weeks before the robbery, a witness saw a man filming the rear of the bank from a white van. We also know that they prepared a hole in the roof of the bank for access, which coincided with a cash drop. They stole a substantial amount of cash. They were threatening and clearly prepared to use serious violence.
Maybe not quite as clever as they'd like to be, though. Tell me about another incident you think they were involved in.
We believe that this gang is linked to a break-in into a bank in Chorley in April 2008, where they broke into the bank, but unfortunately, fortunately, they broke into the wrong part and the customer side and got away with absolutely nothing.
Yeah, unfortunate for them, I guess.
Yes.
The two white males, then, you've got descriptions of those. One of them a bit better than the other. We've got an e-fit of one of them. Tell us what he looks like.
Well, there's the two white males described as 5 feet 11 inches in height. Both spoke with northwest accents. One of the males is described as being in his 30s and has short brown hair.
What about this Asian guy? I mean, he could have been involved. On the other hand, he might just have been somebody standing on the street.
Yeah, we don't know, actually. He's described in his 30s with a round face. Really, we just need to know who he is, if only to eliminate him from our inquiries.
Now, we saw rather dramatically, they burnt out the getaway car there. What do you know about this car? What do you want to know? Yeah,
it's a black A-class Mercedes. It was stolen from Urmston in Manchester on the 1st of February. That's 26 days before the robbery. We need to know where that vehicle was and who had it, and it was bearing this registration number YD05BRL, which is a clone plate from a legitimate vehicle. We need to know where it was.
OK, and it goes without saying you want any witnesses who were there on the day. Thanks for nice, Steve. There is a massive reward on this one, up to 50 grand for information leading to an arrest or a conviction. Please do call. There's the number on the screen. It's 0500 600 600. Or maybe you'd like to remain anonymous, that's fine too. You could call the independent charity Crime Stoppers. I'll give you their number as well. It's 0800 555 111. And if you'd like to take another look at the reconstruction, it's online, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. Now here's Rav with some of Britain's most wanted.
Now, we had a fantastic strike rate last month. 4 men were caught, 1 before we were even off air. So can we better that tonight? First up is this guy, 30-year-old Numan Chowdhury. Police want to talk to him about an assault in Holborn, London last August, where 2 women were glassed in the face and left permanently scarred. Chowdhury has links to Walthamstow and London's West End and not only uses versions of his own name, but his friends as well. Next is Robert Collier, charged with conspiracy to supply cannabis worth £2 million in January 2007. He failed to show up in court and was sentenced to 10 years in his absence. Before the Disappearing Act, 40-year-old Collier worked as a second-hand car dealer in Hersden near Canterbury. He weighed 28 stone and had receding blonde hair and sometimes grew a beard. He may be on the run with a woman and 2 children. Number 3 is this guy, John Kamal Mania, who calls himself Joe, but he's probably using a false identity. Now, he's wanted in relation to the sexual abuse of a child in Reading. Mania's an illegal immigrant and may well be working in a care home looking after vulnerable adults. He has links to Watford. And don't be fooled by babyface number 4. Police want to speak to James Hanrahan in relation to a series of burglaries in Kingston, southwest London, even posing as a police officer to dupe an elderly victim. Now, he's got a habit of crashing stolen cars and could well have left London to escape capture. So, do you know where Hanrahan or any of the others are hiding tonight? Call or text now. The number's on the screen, 0500 600 600, or you can text us on 63399. Just type crime space and then message. Don't forget to leave that space or your message won't get through. And you also check them out online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch. Remember, all of our most wanted stay on the website until they're caught.
Thanks, Rav. 4 weeks ago, on the 30th of May, 35-year-old Michelle Samarovira was found in a children's playground in Walthamstow in East London. She had been strangled, raped and murdered. Michelle was the third victim of the so-called calendar killer, who has struck at least 3 times in the last 3 months. In March, he raped a 59-year-old woman on her doorstep. In April, he raped again, and in May, he killed Michelle. All 3 of the attacks took place within just a mile radius of each other, all at around about 1 o'clock in the morning, and all at the end of the month. Well, detectives are so worried that this man will strike again that they're going to knock on 9,000 doors to take DNA samples from Asian men in Walthamstow who fit the attacker's description. It is the biggest operation of this kind in London since the Sally Ann Bowman murder. With me tonight is Michelle's sister, Anne, and Detective Inspector Stuart Hill. Thank you to you both for coming, especially to you, and it must be very difficult to be here talking about your sister in such tragic circumstances. What can you tell me about her? What sort of person was she?
Michelle was a lovely, caring, gentle person. You know, when she smiled, she lit up the room. Her husband was diagnosed with cancer. I think it was in about 2002, 2003. She became a widow in November 2007, and I believe that she, you know, we knew that she would walk out different times of the night and during the day as well, but especially at night. She wanted to go to places that had some significance. She'd even gone back to the hospice a week before she died as well.
And what would you like to say to the person, if they're watching, who did this to your sister?
Michelle was a young girl. You may have a sister the same age as my sister. You've raped other women, possibly the same age as your mother. I can't believe what you've done to our family, and nothing's ever going to bring Michelle back. We're never going to get the real justice that Michelle deserves, but we want you to give yourself up, basically, or for anybody else that has information to come forward, because this man has got to be stopped and he's got to be punished for what he's done.
And he has got to be stopped. I think it's remarkably brave of you to come and speak to us tonight, and we very much appreciate it, and we hope that you saying what you've said will mean that the case moves forward quickly. Well, Stuart Hill, you're heading up the investigation, a vital investigation. You think the name of the calendar killer, about him striking at the end of every month, is in fact a bit misleading. Tell us why.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, this is an incredibly dangerous person. And we are confident that this person, if he could strike at any time whatsoever. From his DNA profile, we've linked him to 3 offences, and we're currently investigating further offences which he may be responsible for.
OK, you're doing a massive swab of the area in terms of DNA, because you've got vital DNA evidence. Tell us about the area, all within 1 mile.
Well, all the offences have occurred within 3/4 of a mile. We've identified 9,000 houses within that area, and we will be attending each of those houses to ask for a voluntary DNA sample. And the reason we will be doing that is to eliminate people who have the same descriptions as our offender.
You think he's local? We've got a NEFIT. Tell us what's important from the NEFIT.
Yes, we do think he's local. We think he has good local knowledge. He either lives in the area of Walthamstow, or he has lived in the area of Walthamstow before. He's Asian, male between 30 and 40 years of age, and his height is between 5'6" and 5'10". He does speak good English, but he does speak with an accent.
Now, Michelle and the other 2 victims were attacked around about 2 a.m. Do you think the timings are important here?
I think the timings are important, but we must keep an open mind. It is possible that our offender is nocturnal. He may be working through the night, or conversely, he may live close to the area and may have the ability to be able to leave the family home without being out raising any suspicion at all from his family and friends.
We've got some CCTV of Michelle in Summerfield supermarket.
Yes, that is correct, yes.
Before she was killed. Tell us why this is important.
This is important because this is the last sighting of Michelle. As you can see, she's wearing a black jacket with white stripes. We're interested in identifying anybody that was in Summerfields at that time, or who may have seen her leave, or leave in company with any person.
We've also got CCTV of a potential witness. Tell us about this man.
Yes, this man was seen a bit later on in the morning, on the same day as Michelle's murder. He was seen walking across a car park close to where the body of Michelle was found. We're keen to identify that person as we believe that he is a vital and important witness to us. So if you know who this person is, please contact us.
OK, Stuart, thank you very much. And a special thank you to you again, Anne, for coming to speak to us tonight on Crimewatch. If you can help, you must pick up the phone. This man needs to be caught tonight. 0500 600 600. If you've been a victim of rape, for help you can call the victim support line. They are on 0845 30 30 900. Now here's Rav with some more faces in the frame.
Right, my number 5 here. Asad Elahi, wanted in connection with the rape of a vulnerable female in Gorton, Manchester in April 2006. The 22-year-old woman with a mental age of just 8 years old was befriended by her attacker, lured back to his house and then sexually assaulted. Elahi was born in Pakistan and was last known to live in the Longsight area of Manchester. At 6 is Rohan Crooks, wanted in relation to the attempted murder of a young man in Oxford. Shortly after having an argument with Crooks, he was run down and dragged under a green Lexus, which was later found burnt out. Police believe Crooks was behind the wheel. He's 31 years old, has distinctive green eyes and has links to East London and Oxford. Now, my next 2 here pose as father and son and are wanted in connection to the organisation of several cannabis factories in Bradford in 2006. Wyn van Duck is number 7. He was arrested in 2007 for a similar offence in Nottingham, but failed to answer bail and hasn't been seen since. He's 51 years old and also uses the names Mr Hong and Mr Khan. His mate here is 31-year-old Sen Bartrin, also known as Hey Trin, at number 8. He's wanted by 3 separate police forces and has been on the run for 2 years. Both Duck and Trin, originally from Vietnam, are also wanted for using fake British passports. So come on, let's catch them tonight. Call now 0500 600 600 and don't forget you can also check them out online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch.
Thanks, Rav. In the early hours of Valentine's Day this year, a man was loitering on the streets of Bristol city centre. He was looking for a woman to rape. He found one, a girl, barely out of school.
Mum? Dad?
What's the emergency, please? My daughter's just walked in the house. She's 16 years old and she says she's just been raped. Does she know her attacker? No, he had a knife. Threatened to kill her if she screamed. All right.
I just held her really tightly. She was just sobbing and shaking, and all I could do was just hold on to her. She spends a lot of her time feeling very frightened. I think she's absolutely devastated.
On the 14th of February, a group of young college friends got together to see one of their favourite DJs perform here at Clockwork Club in Bristol. For many young teenagers, Valentine's Day holds special memories. But for one young teenager, it'll be remembered for the wrong reasons.
Come on, we're going home. Come on. We're going home, come on.
See ya. Bye. Bye-bye.
Come on. Hi, let's go. Good night, then?
Yeah, it was a great night. Hang on, my feet really hurt.
Go. All right, guys, come on. Hurry up. Feel a bit lonely. Actually, quite a long wait. But this has actually turned out to be quite far.
Guys, I reckon I'll be all right from here.
You sure?
Yeah, I'll be fine.
All right.
I'll do it one day.
Okay. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.
See ya.
See you later.
She left her friends at 5 and continued home alone. From CCTV cameras, we know that she went up Sussex Place and onto Sevier Street, where she was seen by a camera from a food store. This is the last camera sighting we have of her. It's now 5:13 a.m. and she was still alone.
Can I come home with you?
No.
I got a knife. Quiet. I'll kill you. Stop it. Quiet or I'll kill you. Quiet. In here.
She was shaking, she was sobbing. She couldn't really speak. She was trying to get her breath, and I took one look at her and realised instantly something was horribly wrong.
No!
Sorry about that.
The attack was horrendous. It lasted over 10 minutes and could well have been seen. It was in clear view in a residential street. We don't know if the man was local or passing through, but we do know that we need to stop him before he attacks again.
What's hard for her is that she knows that whoever did this has not been caught, and she feels very fearful that she has to go back into the world and be out there, and she doesn't know where this person is. She's lost her confidence. She's just a very changed girl.
Well, I'm joined now by DI Will White. Truly appalling what happened to this young girl. The family, I think, are incredibly brave even to come out and talk to us about this.
It's really hard to imagine how anyone could come to terms with something like this. The victim's being very brave and trying to come to terms and move on. What we do want is it would be a big relief for her and her family for this man to be caught.
She is a brave girl and she's given you a great description. Tell us what you know.
Yes, he's possibly mixed race or Mediterranean appearance. He's in his late 20s or 30s with short, dark, curly hair. He's 5'5" to 5'10" tall and of slim build. We believe that someone may know who this man is from something he said, or they may have concerns having watched this tonight about someone they know who acted strangely on Valentine's Day, or who left the area soon after, maybe a partner, a colleague or a friend. We need that person to pick up the phone and to call us.
And crucially, this is really important if people have got suspicions, because you can easily rule men out if it's not the man. You have got the attacker's DNA.
Yes, unfortunately we don't have a match from the DNA database, but it does mean that if people weren't involved, we can rule them out. Or equally, we can identify the offender very quickly, but we do need people to come forward with names for the EFIT.
Of course, that's the important thing. Can you take us, Will, through the journey that the young lady took?
Yeah, she went up Stokes Croft, City Road, Ashley Road, onto Sussex Place, Sevier Street, and then Ashley Parade and Minto Roads. In particular, we've got a sighting of a vehicle on York Street, a dark vehicle with an occupant and someone stood near it. They could be important witnesses. If they are watching, or if anyone saw that, we need them to come forward.
OK, we're out of time now, Will, but I should tell people that on our website, we've got some crucial pictures of people who could be witnesses. You might not know quite reasonably you have anything to do with this. Take a look on our website, see if you were there that night. It was the early hours of the 14th of February. Stranger rapes are very rare, but clearly this man is extremely dangerous. He may well offend again. If you know anything, however minor you think it is, call us 0500 600 600. I'll give you the victim support number again. Maybe you've been affected by rape. 0845 30 30 900. If you need another look at our EFIT, our reconstructions online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch. Now here's Matthew and Rav with news on some previous cases.
First, the latest on the disappearance of Claudia Lawrence, the 35-year-old chef from York, who's been missing since the 18th of March. Last month, we reconstructed Claudia's last known movements and 2 possible sightings that police believe could hold the key to finding her. We had over 60 calls as a result of our appeal, a fantastic response, and a new key witness has come forward saying he saw the couple on Melrose Gate Bridge on Wednesday the 18th of March rather than Thursday the 19th. But still no one has come forward to identify themselves as the couple. So, was this Claudia? Now, since our programme, there's been widespread speculation about Claudia's relationships, which we described as complex and mysterious. Now, police do not believe Claudia had multiple partners at the time of her disappearance, but are saying her relationships are key to solving this case. So, if you were involved with Claudia, you need to get in contact with the police now. Now, since our appeal, more forensic searches have been carried out at Claudia's local, the Nag's Head, and we'll keep you updated on developments.
Now, back in July 2007, we reconstructed an armed robbery at Rayleigh train station in Essex and the courageous actions of a commuter.
I think the first time that I actually realised something was wrong was when I saw the security guard. In those few seconds that I had to make a call on what to do, I took it upon myself to just go for it and try to help. To my chest and saw a lot of blood.
Will someone please get an ambulance?
I needed 16 pints of blood transfused into me. My collarbone got shattered, so they've had to remove half of it. The bullet's still in my shoulder. I want to get on with my life.
Well, great news, because earlier this month, Brian Wall was found guilty of shooting Adam and planning a series of armed robberies. He was sentenced to a minimum of 12 years.
Now, in February, we reconstructed a horrific arson at a family home in Liverpool, which led to the death of this little girl, 3-year-old Francesca Bibson. Her father, mother, brother and 2 sisters all escaped the blaze, but sadly, Francesca did not and died 3 weeks later in hospital. Well, a fortnight ago, a 44-year-old man was arrested and charged with Francesca's murder, the attempted murders of her family, and arson with intent to endanger life. And we'll be following that court case very closely.
Well, back in that same month, we also featured the vicious attack on 89-year-old Bob Schofield, who was left for dead when thugs broke into his home.
Hello? Hello? Anybody? What are you doing? Get out of here! Get out of my place! Get out!
I was told that he had severe bruising, but I have to say it shocked me to tears when I actually saw his face. You know, I couldn't believe that anybody could do something like that to an 89-year-old man.
Well, extremely sad news, because following the attack, Bob's wife, Molly, well, her health took a turn for the worse and she passed away. They'd been married for 61 years. Well, on the night of our appeal, police received hundreds of calls, but they still need the names of the people responsible for this cowardly attack. Our reconstruction is still online if you think you can help.
For 25 years, John Humble here thought that he'd got away with one of the biggest hoaxes in history when he convinced the world that he was the Yorkshire Ripper. It would take years of police work and a huge leap forward in science before detectives finally got a chance to put him behind bars. Matthew has got the inside story.
The body was found here in the ground.
Anyone who thinks they recognise the voice is asked to ring the Ripper Squad.
Police admit that so far they've had very little evidence to go on.
The killings began in 1975. Women were being murdered with sickening barbarity. In just 3 years, 7 victims died at the hands of one man. No one doubted the Yorkshire Ripper would strike again. It was only a question of when and where. By 1978, the manhunt for the Ripper was already one of the biggest in the history of British policing. And Assistant Chief Constable George Oldfield was the detective the country was relying on to get a result.
We've got 4 in Leeds.
2 in Bradford and 1 in Manchester.
George and his team had followed up hundreds of leads, interviewed thousands of suspects, but still desperately needed a breakthrough.
The pressure on George Oldfield to catch the murderer would have been absolutely immense and would have increased with the discovery of every new victim.
In March 1978, a letter landed on George's desk. Another arrived at the Daily Mirror. Both had a Sunderland postmark, and both had been signed Jack the Ripper. Claiming to be the killer, he taunted police, saying they'd missed out one of his victims, a 26-year-old prostitute called Joan Harrison. Joan's murder had never been officially linked to the Ripper murders, despite similarities. It was enough to get George's attention, but not enough to convince him the letters were genuine, until a third arrived a year later. It too had a Sunderland postmark, but this time forensics would prove a link to Joan Harrison. The man who'd written the letter and the murderer both had the same blood group.
Once we tested the envelope, we knew that the person who'd licked the envelope was a B secreta, and this set off alarm bells, if you like, in that the first letter had mentioned Preston 75, which was believed to refer to the murder of Joan Harrison, and in that case we knew that there was also a B secreta had left fluid at the scene there.
The third letter was to change the whole course of the investigation. Now George had far more than just a hunch. He had forensic evidence that suggested the killer and the writer were the same man. 3 months later, a tape arrived from Sunderland. It was addressed personally to George Oldfield.
I'm Jack. I have the greatest respect for you, George, but Lord, you are no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started.
George needed to respond. So, with handwriting analysis and forensics proving the tape was from the same letter writer, he hoped that someone, somewhere, would now recognise the voice.
Reporters assembled from all over the country to hear the taped voice of a man who claims he's killed 11 women.
Anyone who thinks they recognise...
Hundreds of people called in saying they recognised the voice. This generated thousands of actions for the investigation team.
Voice experts narrowed down the accent to Castletown, a tiny mining village near Sunderland. The whole investigation shifted to the northeast. It seemed like the police were finally closing in on the Ripper. Then, in September, just as the tape had predicted, another victim was found.
Maybe September, October.
George decided to draft guidance for all police forces across the country. The document said that anyone who didn't have a Geordie accent should be eliminated from the inquiries. Now that had dire consequences and set in motion 2 very different reactions from 2 very different men. One man was now gaining in confidence, while the other grew more agitated as police started going door to door in his hometown.
Speak back, I can't hear you, it's a bad line. It's a fake. What's a fake? The tape recorder.
Despite their best efforts, detectives were unable to trace the caller. But little did they know this man was actually telling the truth. The letters and the tape had all been an elaborate hoax. By now, the list of Ripper suspects was enormous. George and his team had got no further forwards.
With the pressures of the investigation, Mr. Oldfield's health had begun to suffer. He looked exhausted, but he wouldn't stop.
Later that year, George Oldfield suffered a heart attack and was finally forced to step down from the investigation. By 1981, police had spent around 2.25 million man-hours hunting for a killer who'd by now claimed 13 lives. But on the 2nd of January, all was about to change. 2 police officers from Sheffield approached a man in a parked car. Sat beside him was a local prostitute. When his story didn't add up, they began a search and found a hammer and a knife, both weapons used in the Ripper murders. The man they arrested that night was Peter Sutcliffe. After hours of questioning, Sutcliffe confessed. He was the Yorkshire Ripper. Detectives had got incredibly close to catching Sutcliffe over the years. They'd interviewed him 9 times. But the hoaxer had such an effect on the course of the investigation, the real Ripper managed to slip through the net. Sutcliffe was found guilty of 13 murders and 7 attempted murders. He was sentenced to life. At his trial, the judge said, the scent was falsified by a cynical, almost inhumane hoaxer. I express the hope that one day he may be exposed. It would be 25 years before that opportunity finally arose. 4 years ago, West Yorkshire Police's Homicide and Major Inquiry team started reviewing cold cases as far back as 1974. The Yorkshire Ripper Hoaxer was one of them.
The most interesting part of the case was that we were able to discover these remnants, these little leftover bits of the envelopes still within the material we'd been stored.
Incredibly, scientists managed to harvest tiny fragments of saliva from the gum seal on the envelope of the 3rd letter.
The thought was going off in your head that, well, if they could get a blood group back in the 70s, then there's a reasonable chance of getting a DNA profile out of these now, even though it's so long afterwards. Once we'd obtained this profile, put it into the database, and then to our astonishment, there was just one hit from a person who'd been sampled in the Northumbria region. The chances of someone else licking that envelope compared to him was 1 in a billion.
I was told to go over immediately to the incident room. A team of detectives would be travelling up to Sunderland and I would be making an arrest later that day.
The name that popped up was John Humble. Back in 2001, when arrested for a minor offence, police took a swab and put Humble's DNA onto the national database. Years later, that would seal his fate.
We went directly to his house. I found him in his living room. He was surrounded by beer cans and bottles of strong cider littered on the living room floor. I told him he was under arrest for perverting the course of justice between 1978 and 1979. He was drunk and didn't respond.
Humble was 22 when he started writing the letters. Now, 49, and still in the northeast, he'd let his life go to ruin. But would he confess?
I did send it.
Just repeat that for me. What did you say?
I did send the letter.
I asked Humble to read a transcript of the Ripper tape, and we played the Ripper tape back to him. It was amazing. His voice hadn't changed.
I have the greatest respect for you, George, but Lord, you are no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started.
Unfortunately, it had been a set of cruel coincidences and predictions, to some extent supported by forensic evidence, which had led the original investigation team away from Peter Sutcliffe and towards John Humble.
Finally, in March 2006, 28 years after he first penned a letter to police, the book was closed on one of the greatest mysteries in British criminal history. John Humble was convicted of intending to pervert the course of public justice. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, a reflection, the judge said, of the impact his actions had on the course of the Yorkshire Ripper investigation. Having taken care to protect his letters from fingerprints, he couldn't possibly have known that 25 years later he'd be caught from licking the envelopes.
You know, I remember that tape. I remember hearing it on the news at the time. It was so distinctive. It had a huge impact on the investigation.
It did. It was a total disaster, a blind alley that cost £6 million and wasted so much police time. I mean, they interviewed thousands of people. They physically, manually checked 15 million letters from the Sunderland area to try to trace the handwriting. And all of that was for nothing. And all the time, worse still, Peter Sutcliffe continued his killings. He killed 3 more times after the letters and the tapes became public.
And why was Oldfield and his team so convinced that it was authentic and it was the right way to go?
It was a mixture of things. I mean, firstly, the style of the letters. Humble had actually used some of the exact phrases Jack the Ripper had used in the original letters in the 1880s. He just got those actually from a book. But for the police, it did seem to fit. Then, of course, there was all the detail, the predictions, the forensic links. All of that, again, seemed to convince the detectives. Again, all Humble was doing was looking at all of the newspaper articles at the time and picking out tiny fragments of information. And Peter Sutcliffe, he of course was watching all of this, and actually when they caught him, they said to him, "Is that your voice on the tape?" He said, "No, but all the while this was going on, I felt safe."
It's a toxic mix. This tiny bit of saliva, all these advances in DNA profiling meant that was all they needed, just this sliver.
I know, it's staggering, isn't it? I mean, you only need a fleck of dandruff. I mean, contrast that to the 70s when they were using this blood grouping evidence. That narrowed things down to 6% of the entire population, still a massive number. And yet the DNA that nailed Humble, that was in a 1 in a billion match. And you cannot escape that.
Always fascinating. Thank you, Matthew. Now, Rav, what's been coming in on the phones tonight?
Some good stuff's come in on the Durham aggravated burglary. Remember, poor Dr. Benson attacked in his own bed, a number of calls there. Then the Walthamstow calendar killer, who struck at least 3 times, killed at least 1 person. 3 potential further intended targets have come forward with what could be crucial information. Kirsty.
OK, that's all for now. Details on all of tonight's cases are online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch. You can log on now for a live update on what's been happening here on the phones. It seems to me it's been a pretty busy night. The lines will be open until midnight tonight and from 7:30 tomorrow morning. Don't go away there, though, because we're back, I think it's on BBC One, after the news with a full update on all of tonight's cases. If you can help, but you haven't called yet, then please do it now. It could all be down to you. Thanks for watching, and for now, bye-bye.